Blessed Day Reflection by Abia listeners. My name is Abia Grant, and we are here to reflect on our life journey. We will be discussing topics related to self awareness, self improvement, and mental health. Also, the purpose of this safe space is for us to be free to discuss the ups and downs, celebrate the wins, and talk about ways to improve the lows. So, welcome to this podcast, and I hope you gain something from this time we share together. Hey guys, how you doing? It is your girl Abia Grant. Welcome back to Reflection by Abia. I hope everyone is doing well and having a blessed day. I have a really good episode for you guys today. I thought that it is very important with these past two episodes that you heard with my mom that we really we kept touching on humbleness, ways to bounce back from things that just impacted our life, and resilience, just resilience in our journey, and knowing that we made mistakes, but we can achieve what we want to achieve. So a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting down with hubby and we was watching this documentary about this famous WWE wrestler. If you guys don't know, your girl is into wrestling. And they were talking about a guy, his stage name is The Miz, and they pretty much was doing like a documentary about his journey to becoming a wrestler and all the setbacks that he basically had, on his journey. And then me looking at that, and then me looking at, things that have happened with myself and on conversations, as I stated that I had with my mom. I always, I came back to the realization in anything that you do, you have to be humble. You have to own your mistakes. You have to learn from your mistakes. So, this episode, I really wanted to talk about self awareness. I really wanted to talk about self improvement. I wanted to get into why there could be a reason you're not achieving what you want to achieve. And as I go through these different bullet points, these are things that I am working on. There are moments in my journey where I've questioned, why am I not where I need to be? What I think would be a blessing to me, but in theory, God may be saying, well, you haven't been humble enough for me to even give you what you think that you deserve. So, yeah, I'm going to be going over different bullet points for this podcast episode. But before we go ahead and get into this episode, I do want to start with some housekeeping rules. As I mentioned before, we are going to be having housekeeping rules on the podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, be sure to hit the follow and notification button so Spotify lets you know when I release a new episode. As well, leave me a comment on what you enjoy about the podcast and give me a 5-star rating. This is how you can support the podcast. Now, the disclaimer. I am not a licensed psychiatrist or therapist. My suggestions and my guest suggestions are based on general knowledge and life experiences. If you're considering making significant changes or dealing with personal issues, seek and talk to a licensed mental health professional. All right, guys. So, where I want to really start at is humbleness, because I feel like humbleness ties into everything. And without you being humble, you can never, I feel like you could never get to where you really want to get to. Like, I think maybe you think that you're there, and I'm not, you know what? Let's not even speak about you. Let's speak about myself. I think that I am there, but I haven't ultimately achieved that 100% of what I want. because I am not being humble about it. But I want to start off with the definition of humbleness. So the definition is having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's importance. And when I've been thinking about this and I kind of reformulated the definition for myself. So I jotted down here, we are not more important than the next important person. And when I say important is that I don't feel like we should have a low estimate of ourselves. I just don't believe that. I feel like we should be like we are the, as they say, the bee's knees, meaning like we are the at the top of the mountaintop. We are the best that we can be. And I don't feel that we should have a low estimate of ourselves. But at the same time, we have to take into consideration that everyone is important. And we're not more important than the next person. We have to keep that in mind because that will set a foundation for how we maneuver, how we speak to people, how we treat people. We would not put ourselves on such a pedestal because we will want to bring up the next person and put the next person on the pedestal because we know that we're both important. You see what I'm saying? So and also at the same time, when I say that is when you're putting that person on a pedestal with you, that you don't have an ego about it. So I'm going to be discussing strategies for building resilience and bouncing back from your setbacks. So the first one that I have here is thinking you deserve success, yet you have not put in the work. I feel like this one here is at the top. Like I said, I watched this documentary about this wrestler, and he worked to. Initially, he started off doing something with like I'm not sure if you guys know the show. I don't know. It was called The Real World, and basically it documented people's lives from different they're coming from different origin places like states and things like that, and they are all in a melting pot in one home, and you're having to deal with different personalities. Now at this time when he was in this home, he nobody really liked him. Nobody really liked him because they just thought his personality was too much and they just thought he was doing the most. So when I actually relate this to myself, when I think about deserving success is with the podcast. One of the things I speak about, or maybe not speak about, but want for the podcast, and I try to project that, is that I want to be able to help people. But being able to help people is also understanding what content to bring to the podcast, who my content may affect. If I've put in enough work to even talk about this said subject, I've grinded enough. The thing is that we think that just because we do something for a particular period of time that we deserve to be at this stage in life or be at this just have all the wins. And in theory, it's like, well, you've only been doing this for a couple of months or a year or 2 years. And you look at other people who have been doing whatever that you may be into, whether it be wrestling, whether it may be podcasts, whether it may be a business, wherever it may be, they have put in the work. So if you haven't put in the work and you have not done your due diligence in it, you cannot expect that you're going to see wins with that. And and I'm not saying that to offend anybody. I'm not saying, okay, well, you're never going to get where you're going to get. When I speak about this, I speak about this to myself as well, too. And it doesn't mean that you do not deserve to get where you want to get to. It's that you have to work at it. And being humble about it in regards to understanding that, yeah, you are important in this situation, but you have to continue to just motivate yourself and put in the necessary Effort. So the next one that I have is willingness to be humble and wanting to accept knowledge that others can offer. Respecting that knowledge and understanding how it can affect others and possibly show you under a different scope. Accepting the knowledge is meaning that it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's in your field. It could be somebody who you maybe had a conversation with. Um, it's understanding that whatever that you may be in, how it can impact, whatever community that you're trying to reach. Respecting the knowledge is just understanding that, especially if you have a mentor, whatever information that they are giving you, that you are grateful for the information that they're giving you. Also, at the same time, when I say that, is when you're at that point where you have reached where you wanted to reach, that you're also sharing that information with other people so that they can reach where you are. I think it's very important that you do not, when you see somebody in need, that you do help that person in need. Because at the end of the day, I feel like comebacks that comes back to humbleness, that come back to you're not more important than the next person. Because I feel like when you do not pass on that torch, I guess you can say, it could easily be taken away from you. Because I believe that God sees, I've given you this information, so now what are you going to do with it? You know, are you going to be selfish and keep it for yourself, or are you going to share this information with other people? Because at the end of the day, I feel that that's what he wants. He wants you to be able to say, okay, well, I learned this from this individual, but this individual didn't have to share this particular information with me. However, due to me learning from this said person, and this information, I'm going to pass it on to the next person. I look at it as kind of like in the way of a teacher. So, like going back to the documentary that I was watching this past week, just so I can, I guess create a story for you to understand how this was applied. Is that this wrestler, when he first had came in to the wrestling, everybody took him as a joke, and there was a individual who I don't know all the wrestlers names, but there was a person who was basically the top kahuna, in wrestling, I guess that'd be the way to put it. And he started sharing the knowledge with him. Why did he share the knowledge with him? He shared the knowledge with him because he said, you know what? When I got into wrestling, people gave me a hard time. And I know what it's like to be wanting this for yourself, but nobody's giving you a shot. So he trained him and he sat down with him and he spoke with him in regards into how to get to the place that he is at. Now, if he never did that, that means that this wrestler may not even have a name for themselves to this day. And at the end of the day, also it shows the who you are within. And I feel like when God sees that, you know what, you are moving with respect, you are moving and blessing someone else, he is going to bless you. Whether it be on this earth or the day that you close your eyes and you move on to your next, journey in life. He sees all the things that you're doing. So if he instead decided, you know what, I am not going to share this information with this guy, what do you think would be his ending? Do you think that God is going to say, well, I'm going to continue to bless you with all the things that you have? Or is he going to be like, you know what, I'm going to take it away from you? Because you're not deserving of it. You haven't shared the knowledge. And this is the thing. Also, you may not get punishment in this life, but you may get punishment later. When it's that time to transition and God starts, looking at all the things and the points and all the rest of that stuff, he may be like, you know, he may have pity on you, but at the same time, he may be like, I gave you the opportunity to help the next man and you chose not to. I don't know about this. So we have to, well, you don't have to, but we should be moving in the right way in our current life and helping the people that we can help. If we have the knowledge to help, we should be helping them. And also, I want to add into that, it shouldn't be because you want praise. It shouldn't be because of monetary reasons. It should be because you're just a good human. Just because you are a good human. It's as simple as that. Hello, everyone. Let's take a quick break. Join me September 3rd as I speak with author Justin Wilson as he takes us on a journey of his recent book, Courageous Vulnerability. It's a collection of poems and short stories. In this book, he shares his journey of discovery, understanding, and healing. The podcast episode will feature one of his poems, Dark Place, that examines what do you do when you feel alone. If anybody is listening, and who do you rely on? His book is available now on Amazon. The link will be in the show notes. So the next bullet point I have is being personable and not having an ego. Sometimes people can help you but don't want to because they see you as a waste of their time. So this is speaking about that individual who wants to reach this goal, whatever goal that may be, and them just thinking that they know it all. They're not seeing the bigger picture because their ego is blocking them. I'm guilty of that. I had a conversation actually with my mom this week, which I learned from it. But and my ego was such in a way. It's something that I wanted to do for the podcast. And my mom just said to me, you know what, Bia, you're not ready. Like you're getting ready. You're getting the tools in order to showcase, this or do this particular topic. I'm going to just throw that out there. But you're not ready. And I had to stop my ego. I had to block my ego and say, you know what, Abia, you need to listen to the bigger picture. This person who knows you, this person who wants to see the best for you is telling you, I don't think that you're ready yet. And she may listen to this and she may be like, girl, I don't know why you talked about this on the podcast episode, but I like to keep it real with you guys. My intentions with this podcast is to bring light to people and to heal. And I don't want for my healing to be misconstrued as pain, that I'm causing pain to someone. So again, like I said, I had to put my ego to the side. And now sometimes also people feel like, well, back in my day when I was younger and I used to do some things back in my day. And my mom will be like, Bia, I don't think that you should do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. And she'd be like, okay. Although she was my mom, at this time I was probably in my 20s or teens or 20s, so I was already at the house at this time. But again, she's still my mother. I would have conversations with her, and she'd be like, I don't think you should do this. And then I'll turn around and I'll do it. And then I'll get repercussions from whatever she told me not to do. And it's almost in a way you want to come back and say, I told you that this was going to be the outcome of the situation. Because sometimes when you're in a situation, you're not able to see all the possibilities. But when somebody is outside and or they have more life experiences, they're able to see more than what you're able to see because you haven't yet been through it. But at a point, I feel like she probably thought it's a waste of time trying to tell this girl to not do X, Y, and Z. So I have to let her get the penalty from it, and then hopefully she'll learn, you know? Like, and I had to make that mistake. And sometimes, just speaking of in regards to this topic, if you're dealing with a situation where you're telling somebody over and over and over again that you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z, and they keep wanting to do X, Y, and Z and not listening, you need to just allow for them to go. You need to allow for them to, hopefully, I mean, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some repercussions from whatever situation that they are in, but there's only so much that you can do. They're going to do whatever that they want to do at the end of the day. So if they don't see what you see, then you got to let it go. You got to let them do what they want to do, as I had mentioned before. Now, one of the next bullet points that kind of ties into this is not learning from your mistakes. So, as I mentioned before, I've made a lot of errors in my 20s and 30s and teens, and even to this day. And learning from your mistakes is one, owning your mistake. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into Reflection by Abia. Feel free to check out the podcast Instagram page and my personal page, simply.abia, also on Instagram. The links will be available in the show notes, so let's get back to the podcast. And I'm not saying, okay, the mistake was, you could go back and you can change it, because you can't go back and change your mistakes. However, you can make sure that mistake doesn't happen again. You can't break it down and be like, okay, what part of this situation? Because it may not have been the whole, ending is the problem. It could have maybe been just one single part. So you need to break it down and you need to say, okay, this is the part in which messed it up. And therefore I am not going to continue to do that anymore. But maybe all the other parts are working for you. Or it may be a situation where no parts are working for you. And it's just like that was a complete mistake. And therefore, I'm just not going to do that again. But it's learning from your mistakes and owning from your mistakes and making sure that you do not do them again. Life is about learning. Every day I learn. Every day it's like, okay, as we age, that's the point of life. The point of life is to learn. So when I, had this conversation, I go back into this thing I wanted to bring to the podcast. When I had this conversation with my mom, it's like, I know at the end of the day that she wants the best for me. And it it will be a mistake for me to put myself into a situation that I don't really have any knowledge of, you know, and it impacting other people. It's learning that you just don't know it all. And that's okay that you don't know it all. But that's the reason why you have people in your life, people who are in your journey that wants the best for you. And they're going to speak up and they're going to say something. So let's go ahead and get into the next bullet point. So scared to take a leap because of the unknown, but the unknown could open doors that couldn't even imagine. So this kind of just ties back into the resilience part of this topic and bouncing back from, the setbacks is sometimes we are afraid to take leaps. And I talk about this, in prior episodes as well too. Because the fear of the unknown. Obviously the fear is just our own thoughts. Okay, if we were to make this particular decision, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But at the end of the day, you do not know the ending. So you have to understand that you need to continue. You need to take steps forward because what you may be imagining in your head may not be the outcome, and even if it is a mess up, that you learn from that mess up. Okay, what am I going to do differently? Yeah, I took this leap. However, what am I going to do next time? That. is going to allow for me to achieve my goal. So going back again to this wrestling guy, he took a leap in his career. He started to want to get into, like, I think movies. It didn't work out for him. It got a point in his journey where he was in wrestling for a couple of years and he won the titles and everything like that. But then he started to become pretty much like an unknown wrestler. People didn't really again care for him. Yeah, he won this title, but he never got to the status in which he thought that, he deserved, or God thought that he deserved. And he took a leap and he, got into movies, and that really didn't pan out too well. But it gave him the opportunity to take some time and gather really who he wants to be. And then when he got back into the wrestling, he came with this different personality. And everybody started to accept this personality because he showed up differently than the person he was initially before. He took a chance, you know. People always, I don't know why this is the case. It's like sometimes I think people, when you're knocked down and they see that you are fight, and they see that you want it so bad, it's like they have a different interpretation of who you are. And I feel like this was the case for him, that they imagined him differently than who he was before. And, he had other, I don't want to say altercations and things, but other things that transpire within his career as well too, and him showcasing to the audience, that, okay, I really want to be a WWE wrestler. He pushed his wants and his needs. He didn't allow for, because he been losing so many matches the past, I think it was like a year or something like that. He's losing all these matches to allow it to deter him. He took a step back. He said, you know what? This is what I going to do differently. And he tackled it again. And that is how life is. Think about it. If how many inventions and things that are out there, things that people created. Do you think after the first time they did whatever particular invention that it was accurate right then and there? Do you really think that they went through trials? They went through steps. They changed this. They tuned this. They worked at it to get it to where it needs to be. And where people are now looking at you and like, okay, I can accept what you're bringing to me. You know, that's the way, that's how you take that leap. You just continue to persevere. You could not allow for yourself to, I want to say, stew and whatever didn't work out. You're learning from whatever didn't work out. But again, I want to also tie it into you're being humble about the situation, because this topic is about being humbleness. You cannot expect to reach where you want to reach if you're not humble at the same time. So he was also humble to this community, this wrestler. You know, they saw who he was and they accepted him for who he was because he was being true to himself. So that's just, I mean, guys, if you get a chance, watch The Miz. I think the episode is on Peacock, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a really, really, really good, inspiring lesson. I just started to process what was going on and apply it to my own life. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get into the last bullet point. And I spoke about this before. Taking a step back in regrouping. Sometimes you could be at it, but nothing grows because you may need to see that one under a different light. And I spoke about this in the last bullet point of him and wanting something so bad that he had to take a step back and he had to regroup. And applying this into my own life is I put myself into places, with the podcast and just life in general. I take a step back and I try to find the knowledge with whatever that I'm trying to do. I do that because, again, like I said, sometimes when you're in it, you're not able to see all the parts that are trying to work out, or that are trying to just gel together. So sometimes you feel like there is no growth, but that I think that there is growth. It's just when you're in it, you don't see growth. Like when I apply this to my life, I think about myself a year, 2 years ago. And there's moments in my journey in which I, talking about, mental health and everything like that, where I was in a bad position, and sometimes I, like, for instance, this week I was feeling, levels of anxiety, kind of just saying to myself, Abia, why are you feeling this particular way? I had to take a step back and I had to regroup, and I spoke to my mom and I spoke to my husband, and I got myself back to a sense of peace. But it's allowing for me to sit down and focus on why am I feeling this particular way, not necessarily being in the mix of trying to, I want to say, doing tasks, because I tend to do that. And I was able to see myself underneath what they say is a different light, because before I wouldn't do that. And I speak about this often on the podcast about how that for me, it's just I don't sometimes it's just like I'm on a hamster on the wheel, and it's hard for me to jump off of that wheel. But where I've gotten myself to now that I'm able to see it and know that there is a problem, you know. When I talk about the wrestler, going back into that, because I'm talking about these things in tandem with each other. He saw that his career wasn't really going anywhere. So he took a step back and he tried something else and he regrouped. And then he showed up even better than who he was before. And that's the journey about life, is that we could never go back and change the past, but we can change the future. So, guys, instead of doing the word of the day, I'm going to read you a scripture from Proverbs 18:12. And it states, before a downfall, the heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. And haughty means arrogantly superior. And I just tied this into humbleness. Like, humbleness cannot come before pride. And I tied this into the bullet points and everything that I talked about in this podcast episode, is that we cannot expect to reach where we want to reach if we're not humble about how to get there, if we're not humble about where we are right now and being grateful for what we have at this moment. Humbleness is at the start of pretty much anything that you want to do, to be honest with you. We cannot expect to have all the things that we want. We cannot expect, again, to achieve all the things that we want to achieve if our pride is in the way. I was reading that God does not like a prideful person. And the thing is that He is not going to give us the things that we want, that He may want to give to us if we're out here and we're not being humble about it. And we're not being grateful for what we have at this moment. Or we're not sharing the knowledge with other people. He is going to be looking at you like, girl, guy, nah, you need to do better. So, yeah. But guys, that is where I'm going to leave this podcast episode. I hope that you have gained something from the information that I shared with you today. in regards to humbleness and resilience and taking those steps from being set back in life. Even if you learn one thing from this episode, then that means that I achieved my goal. And whatever I have that I'm learning, I'm going to be sure to share it with you guys and everything. So stay blessed out there in those streets. Make sure that you treat others kindly out there in those streets. And God willing, I will talk to you guys in another podcast episode. All right, guys, have a good day. Bye. Thank you for listening to Reflection by Abia. Let me know in the comments section what you thought about today's episode and share the podcast with your friends and family. The link will be available in the show notes.